Oh, hi everyone. I brought my bag and my coat and my hat in case I need to go. No, it's not. You don't look like trustworthy people. Hi, I'm Neil Curran and I have a phobia. Apparently, I'm not a scientist and I'm not a comedian because I do improv and we frown at the thought of being comedians. So I'm going to have to try and be interesting. So I have a phobia. I am terrified of flying. And apparently, 8% of the population of the planet have a phobia, and I don't believe that. So we're going to do a little test. What I'd like you to do is to turn to somebody who you don't know. Like, don't turn to your lover, because that would be boring. Turn to somebody you don't know. If they're really attractive, that's a bonus. So do that. Turn to them now. We're going to play rock, paper, scissors. Except instead of doing rock, paper, scissors, we're going to count from 3 to 1. We're going to count from 3 to 1, and instead of doing rock, paper, scissors... Let me explain first. Calm down, lads. You can get a point afterwards. So we're going to count from 3 to 1, and instead of saying rock, paper, scissors, what I want you to do is shout out something that you're afraid of. So you ready? 3, 2, 1. And there we go. And they're still talking about it. So I'm pretty sure. Did anybody shout out, I'm not afraid of anything? Did anyone say they weren't afraid of anything? You should leave. There's something wrong with you. Okay, so one person in the room. Okay, so we're all afraid of something, and some people think there's spiders climbing into their mouth when they sleep, and there is. Some people think there's a monster in their wardrobe, and there is. But for me, the thoughts of getting on an aeroplane frightens the shit out of me. So much so that by the time this year is over, I'll have said the rosary 20 times and been on 20 planes, and I've never been to Mass. I am absolutely petrified of flying. So I fly a lot for improv, and I fly a lot for my job. And I couldn't pick the most furthest destination from Dublin to fly to do a lot of that, and that's San Francisco, which is 10.5 hours away. Now, since the invention of the Fitbit and Apple Watches that track your fitness, I burn more calories sitting down on a 10.5 hour flight than I do running a marathon. So when I work with people who do marathons and run, they go, oh, I ran for 3 hours today in the marathon. I'm like, I flew for 10.5 hours and I've lost 3 stone. I sweat it out of me. So my phobia got worse and worse over the years. My very first flight. Who here has an Irish daddy? Yeah. So you had to think about that for a minute. It's like, where's it from? So my first ever time I was flying, I was 15 years of age, and we were moving to Africa, which is another story, as a family. So I was 15, and when you're that age, you look to your parents as if they are God, or they are the most important people. Your parents are cooler than everyone. So there I was. We were traveling to the airport, and the first stop on the trip was to London. So a short flight with Aer Lingus, 1 hour, and it's the 90s. It was very high class. You know, the air hostesses, because that's what they called them back then. That's not sexist. The air hostesses wore gloves when they were serving you your sandwiches, and you didn't have to pay for your sandwiches or your drink. So on the way to the airport, I'm like, I'm getting on an aeroplane. This is fucking amazing. I didn't say that to my dad, but this is fucking amazing. And I pictured this big, strong metal structure sitting on the runway that says, fucking hell, I'm an aeroplane and I can fly. And then I get to the airplane and it's made of plastic. And all of a sudden, all the vision I had of flying, have you ever touched the wall of an airplane? And you fly 11 kilometers above the earth in a thing that you can make flex by touching. So we're on the runway and we're waiting to take off, and then, you know, everything's cool. The air hostesses strap yourself in. They go through the safety thing. I was paying it. Does anyone pay attention to the safety briefing? No. You do? Yeah. And when you're afraid of flying, you never pay attention to the safety briefing because it means there's a risk of something going wrong. So yeah, there's a tip if you're nervous. Actually, who isn't afraid of flying? Shout out if you've got a fear of flying. Yeah, so there's a tip. Don't listen to the safety briefing because it instills a fear of terror in you that something's going to go wrong. So we get the safety briefing. Everything's calm, cool, collected, and then we get to the runway and we're about to take off. And of course, what happens when a plane is about to take off? It gets very noisy and you're pushed back into the chair. And I just went pale because, first of all, we associate, as young people, we associate loud noises with bad things. Like, so when you're on a romantic date with a lover, you don't go, oh my God, you're looking fucking sexy tonight. Oh yeah, I love you so much. But we just don't conduct conversations like that. So why should I feel safe in a plastic object that's about to go 11 kilometers in the air that's making the most noise I've ever heard as a human being? So as the flight went on, my terror, I gripped the table, the tray table. I was gripping that for dear life. And at one point I decided, I've got an Irish dad. I'm going to have to open up to him and tell him I'm scared. And I turned to him and I was about to open my heart and tell my father I loved him. It was the only time in life he was ever going to hear those 3 words from me. And I saw a reflection of myself. And I said, oh Christ, this doesn't bode well. Here is a 40-something-year-old man, and he's more terrified than me. So I didn't know what to do. It's like the God image of my parents had been shattered by the fact that my father was as much a wuss as a 15-year-old boy was. So we got to Heathrow, and we were getting ready for the next flight. And I was like, that was 1 hour, and I have 8.5 more to go. What do I do? So my mother had the perfect solution. She gave me a Valium, and she gave my dad a Valium, and we eventually got there. Now, I'm not 15 anymore. I've flown about 15 times so far this year. I'm touching 40. I'm a bit more mature, allegedly. And I'm supposed to know that planes don't crash. Did you know that 120 people have died on the roads this year in Ireland in car accidents? It's an awful statistic. How many people do you think have died in the last 50 years on a plane originating from Dublin or flying to Dublin? None. None. Does that make you feel more confident? Oh. Well, that doesn't work for me. There are 3 million people every day will get on an airplane. 3 million people. That's like nearly Ireland getting on an airplane. 3 million. So, anyone want to hazard a guess as what the chances are of dying in a plane crash? 1 in 50,000. Jesus, no wonder you've got a fear of flying. No, it's 1 in 19 million. You're more likely to die. People throw the statistics out the whole time. Oh, you're more likely to die on the drive on the way to the airport. Like, that's not making me fucking feel better. So 1 in 19 million. But if 3 million people fly every day, that should mean that we have a crash. The scientists and mathematicians in the room. How often should there be a crash if there's one in... More frequent than fucking 50 years between it has since Dublin started flying. But so I realized my phobia was getting to a dark place. I told my mother that I have a really bad fear of flying. She goes, "You drive motorbikes and you get on, you do improv and you're afraid of flying." And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, the only thing I can tell you as your mother is make sure you wear clean underwear in case you have an accident." And I was like, "Great, that's great." So I went and talked to somebody, a pilot, and explained to this pilot that I have a fear of flying. And he just said to me, "Look, explain to him the mechanics of a plane work," and said, "This will make you feel better because you'll know what's going on." And it did help a little bit, because when I'm sitting terrified in a chair wondering if I'm going to die, I still sit terrified on a chair wondering if I'm going to die, but at least I know the flaps are extending. We're still going to die. But I know a little bit about how the plane operates. But I asked him about turbulence. And everyone's afraid of turbulence. And nobody likes turbulence, I think it's fair to say. And then everyone's, "Oh, turbulence is normal." So he tried to reassure me about turbulence by saying, "Let me explain to you in one word what turbulence is and why it's perfectly normal." And he said, "Nature. Fucking nature. Earthquakes, tornadoes, fucking dinosaurs. That's all nature." And that was supposed to offer me reassurance. So I decided, right, I've tried talking to my parents, I've tried Valium, I tried alcohol, and I tried talking to a professional, a pilot who does it for a living. And I came up with my own solution. I said, I need to create a survival kit for getting on a plane. So I just happened to have my airplane survival kit here in my man bag. 40 years of age, and he has a man bag. So in my airplane survival kit, it's very hard to pull it out. I'll just take them out in random order. First thing I have is a set of noise-cancelling headphones. Now, these retail for €350. They're made by Bose. The reason I have those is because when I'm on a plane, I figured if I have something that cancels out the external noise, I don't want to know I'm going to die. I figure I'll just listen to Muse or to Beyonce or whatever it is while we're going there. I'm quite okay with that. The other thing that I bring with me is a tea bag. Because if you're going to die, fucked if I'm drinking that cheap tea on a plane. I want a proper cup of Lions tea on a plane. And of course, the last thing that I bring, the most important thing, I've actually had this in my bag ever since my mother told me. And I only realized the irony of what I had in the bag recently. And if I turn around the front, you'll see why. Thanks very much.
Neil Curran, everybody.